It begins with a warning. Not from a modern analyst. Not from a political leader. But from a prophet. Writing more than 2,600 years ago. A message preserved through centuries. Studied. Debated. Questioned. And now, in a world of rising tension, shifting alliances, and global uncertainty, that message is being read again with a different kind of attention. Because in the book of Ezekiel, there is a description of a war. Not a small conflict. Not a regional dispute. But a massive coalition of nations. Moving together. With one objective, Israel. And what makes this prophecy so compelling is not just the nations involved. It's the ending. Because according to Ezekiel 38, this war does not unfold the way anyone expects. To understand the prophecy, we have to go back more than 2,600 years. The setting is exile. Jerusalem has fallen. The temple has been destroyed. The people of Israel have been scattered. And among them is a man named Ezekiel. A priest. Turned prophet. Far from home, Ezekiel begins receiving visions. Some symbolic. Some deeply unsettling. But in chapters 38 and 39, he records something that stands apart. A vision of a future conflict. A gathering of nations. A sudden invasion. And an outcome that defies expectation. The prophecy begins with a command, set your face against Gog. Of the land of Magog. Gog is described as a leader. But the real focus is the coalition behind him. Ezekiel lists several regions: Magog, Persia, Cush, Put, Gomer, and the house of Togarmah. For centuries, scholars have studied these names. Many connect them to regions that exist today: Persia, widely recognized as modern Iran; Cush, often associated with parts of East Africa; Put, linked to North Africa; Gomer and Togarmah, commonly connected to areas near modern Turkey; and Magog, frequently associated with regions to the north of Israel. It's important to be clear, these identifications are debated. They are interpretations, not certainties. But what makes the prophecy so fascinating is that many of these regions already exist within the modern geopolitical landscape. And in some cases, they are forming relationships that echo the structure Ezekiel described. Which raises a question: is this symbolic language? Or a literal future alignment? Ezekiel describes the invasion with striking imagery. You will come like a storm. Like a cloud covering the land. This is not a small force. It is overwhelming. Coordinated. Sudden. A coalition moving with confidence. But there is a detail that has puzzled readers for centuries. Ezekiel says Israel will be living in a state of relative security. Villages without walls. A people at rest. This has led to different interpretations. Some believe it refers to a future time of peace. Others see it as a sense of perceived security, confidence in defenses, alliances, or stability. Whatever the meaning, the implication is clear: the attack comes as a surprise. And the coalition believes it will succeed. Why would such a coalition form? Ezekiel provides a clue. The invaders say, "I will go up to plunder and loot." This suggests motive. Opportunity. Some interpret this economically. Israel sits at a strategic crossroads, connecting continents, trade routes, and resources. In recent years, energy discoveries have added another layer of importance. Others believe the motive could be strategic or ideological. Control. Influence. Position. The prophecy does not give every detail. But it makes one thing clear: the coalition believes the invasion will be easy. They expect victory. They expect gain. But this is where everything begins to change. As the coalition enters the land, something unexpected happens. Ezekiel describes a sudden disruption. A great earthquake. Mountains collapsing. Terrain shifting. Chaos. Then confusion spreads among the invading forces. The prophecy says, every man's sword turns against his brother. In other words, the coalition begins to fracture from within. Panic replaces coordination. Strategy collapses. And what appeared unstoppable begins to unravel. But the description goes even further. Ezekiel speaks of fire, judgment, and overwhelming disruption. Some interpret this as symbolic language. Others see it as literal. But regardless of interpretation, the message is unmistakable: the invasion fails completely. This is the part that sets the prophecy apart. Because in most historical conflicts, outcomes are determined by power, numbers, strategy, technology. But in Ezekiel 38, the outcome is not attributed to military strength. It is attributed to something else: intervention. The text repeatedly emphasizes a purpose behind the event. A phrase appears again and again: then they will know. Then the nations will know. Know what? That I am the Lord. This shifts the entire focus of the prophecy. It is not just about war. It is about recognition, awareness. A moment where the outcome forces the world to confront something beyond human control. For centuries, this passage was studied primarily in theological circles. But in the modern era, something changed. In 1948, the State of Israel was re-established. After nearly 2,000 years without a nation. For many readers of prophecy, that event alone was significant. Because Ezekiel describes Israel as a functioning nation in the land. Then global dynamics began to shift. Alliances formed. Tensions rose. Regional influence changed. And suddenly, a prophecy written thousands of years ago began to intersect with modern discussions. Again, this does not prove fulfillment. But it does increase relevance. Because for the first time in history, many of the components described in the prophecy exist simultaneously. It's important to pause here. Every generation has believed it might be witnessing the end. World wars, Cold Wars, regional conflicts. Each felt significant. And history continued. So we must be careful. Ezekiel 38 does not provide a date. It does not identify a timeline. And responsible interpretation avoids speculation that goes beyond the text. But caution does not mean dismissal. Because the prophecy still raises meaningful questions. About history. About patterns. About the possibility that events may unfold within a larger narrative. There is another dimension to this prophecy. One that is often overlooked. The spiritual layer. The Bible frequently describes reality as both physical and spiritual. Visible and invisible. In other parts of Scripture, we see references to unseen influences over nations. Forces that shape outcomes beyond what is visible. If that framework is taken seriously, then Ezekiel 38 is not just geopolitical. It is also spiritual. A convergence not only of armies, but of purposes. And that adds weight to the outcome. Because the ending is not just a military collapse. It is a moment of revelation. So where does this leave us? Are we witnessing the beginning of this prophecy? Or something else entirely? The truth is, we don't know. The text does not give enough detail to confirm specific events. But it does give a framework. A pattern. A description of how such a moment would unfold. And when events in the real world begin to resemble that pattern, people pay attention. Not because they are certain, but because the parallels are difficult to ignore. Most discussions about this prophecy focus on the war, the nations, the alliances, the conflict. But the most important part is the ending. Because it reverses expectations. The coalition is powerful, organized, confident. And yet, it fails. Not gradually. Not strategically. But suddenly. Unexpectedly. Completely. And that forces a different question. Not just, will this war happen? But, if it does, what would it mean if it ended this way? If a coalition of nations were to rise against Israel, and the outcome defied every expectation, what would the world conclude? Coincidence? Strategy? Or something more? Ezekiel's answer is clear. The purpose would be recognition. A moment where the outcome points beyond human explanation. But until such an event occurs, we remain in the realm of interpretation. Watching. Analyzing. Considering. The prophecy of Ezekiel 38 is not just about the future. It is about perspective. It challenges the idea that history is random, that events are isolated. Instead, it suggests the possibility of a larger story, one that unfolds across generations. And whether that story is nearing a critical moment, or still unfolding in ways we don't yet understand. One thing is certain, the questions it raises are not going away. Because as long as the world remains uncertain, as long as nations rise and tensions grow, ancient words like these will continue to be read. Not just as history, but as something more. Something waiting. So now the question comes to you. Do you think this prophecy describes a future event? Or something symbolic? Are we watching patterns form? Or simply interpreting them through the lens of Scripture? I'd genuinely like to hear your perspective. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this breakdown helpful, consider subscribing, because we'll be exploring more passages like this, and what they might mean in today's world. Because sometimes, the most important questions are the ones that don't have easy answers. And this may be one of them.